So before I get into this video, I just want to give a quick disclaimer that I will be covering stuff that is very heavy spoiler for the anime. Again, the anime won't be covering any of this stuff, as the anime is still covering stuff missing from the previous volumes and slowly making its way into volume 5 as currently uploading this video. So this is volume 10. The anime is not even reached volume 5 just yet. It's about to, so again, as a pre-warning, this is very, very heavy spoiler stuff, so you have been warned. So when talking about volume 10 of the light novel series, one of the things that I kind of was very interested about was the fact that in the early stages of the light novel, at least for me, it made it look like Leon was going to be the main antagonist of the story, with Rimuru kind of doing that declaration that he was going to destroy Leon as revenge and all that kind of stuff. But you kind of learn very quickly, honestly, in my opinion, that Leon is really not that much of a problem when you compare to someone else that is stealing other people's abilities and wants to take over the world and become king. And the fact that, again, Rimuru kind of let him go, and I kind of felt that was a really weak excuse of how he ended up escaping from Rimuru's grasp, which was just Raphael basically being sort of soft on Rimuru, saying that, you know, that it felt that he wouldn't have killed the other antagonist for that volume. I don't know, it just, to me, it felt like a really weak excuse for why that happened. Again, Rimuru kind of, you know, puts the clamp down and says, you know, I would have done it either way. But I think the biggest issue wasn't letting, as I call him, Psychopath go, which is Yuki, I think is how you pronounce it, Y-U-U-K-I. But the fact is that the main antagonist for that particular light novel is to do with a girl that has this insatiable greed and basically wants to take over the world as well and unite everyone and bring peace and order. But how they want to go about it really isn't peace and order. It's just basically controlling everyone with economics, which honestly, I have a deep love for economics and numbers, so I enjoyed the kind of concept. And I will say I was really disappointed that she ended up dying at the end of the volume. Like, the whole volume built her up, and then she died right at the end. On top of that, really, to be honest, a good chunk of the volume wasn't even about her to begin with. Like, the first major chunk, which honestly felt like the first, I would say the first 1/4 of the volume, was to do with the dungeon, going up the levels and the difficulties and the money and all the rest. And there was some hints of certain people exploiting the dungeon were actually connected to her. But that being said, it just felt like, you know, for a whole volume that was meant to sort of be focused on her, a good chunk of it was not even focused on her. It was just kind of later on, and then she died at the end. And I kind of wanted to see a little bit more of her because I just thought she was interesting because of how sort of wonko she was. But then Psychopath Boy is also just as wonkos as well. So it was just kind of something that I wanted to see more of her because of her ability, how she was manipulating, how she was trying to use economics. In the previous volume, they were trying to do the exact same thing as well. So there was a bit of her in the previous volume, but it was more of her influence in using certain people, not directly getting to see her, what she was doing in the actual light novel. So yeah, the previous volume, volume 9, did have a bit about her, but it was more just kind of her puppeting people, while volume 10 was a lot more hyper focused on her after they got over the dungeon stuff. So again, it's just a minor gripe. I just kind of wanted to see more of her because I just thought she was interesting. But again, Psychopath seems to be the main sort of point of the story. Like, he's basically gaining powers now, so he stole her power, manipulated and used that situation to his advantage, pretended he was under control, which again, that's where Raphael was like, actually no, he wasn't. And I was just kind of like, why didn't you point that out to Rimuru from the beginning? Because that honestly is a very, very big flaw in Raphael's wisdom, as they call him, the Lord of Wisdom. I felt like there was like a really big flaw in its judgment, because it's like, this person is tricking Rimuru into thinking that they're controlled, and you didn't say a thing about it. Honestly, I had to give constructive criticism there. I do feel like the author's done that deliberately as kind of like a plot armor of like, oh, we don't want him to be defeated yet, so we're just going to make Raphael kind of have a lapse in judgment and kind of, you know, think Rimuru wasn't up to the task, which I just think is a weaker excuse. I would have liked seeing something a little bit more logical in how he got away, and it would have added more to the, you know, the connivingness, the manipulation, that kind of thing, which at the end of the day, Rimuru still knows the truth anyway. So even though he technically tricked Rimuru at the start, Raphael does tell him in the end, oh yeah, he was never under control, it was all a game. So now Rimuru still knows that he is technically a bad guy. But that also being said, it kind of feels like, again, he's going to be the long-term antagonist and Leon is not going to be that. So that does interest me a bit. Again, I'm gonna have to see how it turns out. Leon's just kind of been in the background for the whole time, even though Rimuru again did that declaration. It's just kind of like he hasn't done anything to really antagonize Rimuru, unless later on they have a confrontation. But the way I see it right now, and this is just how I see it from these 10 volumes, is that it's going to be an arms war between Rimuru and Psychopath, as I'm now nicknaming him, that his name to me. He is basically gaining power. So I see him trying to find as much power as possible by stealing other worlders' powers and then basically combining them all together to make, you know, extra powers, unique powers, all that kind of stuff, ultimate skills, etc., to try and arm himself to beat Rimuru. While Rimuru is going to be doing the exact same thing as a demon lord, and then I see him being as like a hero of some sort, which is funny because the hero is the bad guy and the demon lord is the good guy. So kind of a bit of fun irony there. But that's how I see the story going, at least from that perspective. And it's very much at least hinting that. The other thing to also note as well is one of the other major focuses is also on Milim, and particularly how they were trying to get Milim away from Rimuru, because again, the whole point is that they want to control him mentally, or they want to completely kill him or steal his powers, and by doing so, that would then run a risk of Milim and Veldora going completely absolute crazy because they would be enraged. So they're trying to do it in such a way that it, you know, stops them from doing that, which I just don't think that's ever going to be the case. But there's also a bit of stuff to do with Milim's pet as well, and how Rimuru basically saves the pet, does this whole thing. It's a very simple, basic part of the story right at the end, where they're basically just trying to save it, and that ends up happening. But I just thought it was really cute. It does roll back into some of the backstory for Milim as well, which I might do a separate video on, because I like Milim. I think she's probably one of the more fun and interesting characters just because of how outlandish and energetic she can be. Particularly one of my favorite parts for this volume, once they got over all the sort of itty-gritty details of the dungeon, they basically made these little avatars, the group of them, and they went into the dungeon and started killing off dungeon adventurers because they just got sort of annoyed that people were kind of gimping the system to try and get all the good rewards. So they kind of made their own avatars, went in there, learned some tricks. Again, good training for them as well, because they were able to learn different things. But I just thought it was really funny the way they kind of made these weaker avatars, which ended up being super OP anyway. It's like, imagine if you made like a fresh new character, but you could move over all your stats and everything, and you get really bumped up gear, but you still keep level 1, but you just keep everything else. It's just like, oh look, it's a newbie, oh, with max level stats and really high-end gear, oh, we're dead. That's basically how it felt to me, though they weren't like to the same power level as what they are. So Rimuru didn't have his full power, Milim didn't have its full power. They were just basically running in like, I would almost say 50% capacity in there. But it was still really fun because they were just kind of trolling the adventurers in the dungeon, and there's this whole like economy system in there. I think it's really cool, but at the same time, as far as constructive criticisms go, it does drag on a little bit. Like, that whole part took like 1/4 of the volume. At least it felt like it took longer because it kept going over all the itty-gritty details, like the restrooms, the toilet breaks, the eating arrangements, how they were going through the dungeons level by level, different traps, arrangements, all of the itty-gritty details. I don't need to go over it as well. So I kind of got a little bit bored of that because I really wanted to get to the main point of what the volume was meant to be about, which was meant to be about this girl, this other worlder with this insatiable greed and this whole economic war that they were going to kind of play off, but that didn't end up being the case. I still really enjoyed her character. I just wish she didn't die. I wish she kind of escaped and then knew the truth about Psychopath betraying her and not being under her influence, because she was able to use their desires and manipulate them and puppet them. I kind of wanted to see her still be around. I just kind of liked her character, so I kind of wanted to see her around a little bit more. But at the same time, it does make sense why she needed to go, because it needed to feed more power into sort of the main antagonist that has now gained an additional power and is obviously going to get stronger and stronger, which again, as I mentioned before, is going to turn into some sort of arms war between them. The last point to also note is there was a sort of spy or another other worlder that was working for this girl that ends up getting captured, offered a better sort of situation. They end up working for him. So at the end of the day, out of all the characters, one of them at least survived that had some interesting backstory to them. And I kind of felt bad for her as well, because she got really treated poorly by her own allies. They just didn't really care about her, so they kind of arranged to be like, all right, well fine, you can join, but you've got to be really careful, don't do anything bad or we're offing you. So it was a good opportunity for her to redeem herself, but all she cared about was getting really good food. So that's basically her currency. She's just like, yes, this food's amazing, I will do everything in my power to serve you so I can get more amazing food. So that is one of the big sort of hooks with the actual light novels and the anime and the manga and the side stories, is that the food is so much better there that everyone kind of gravitates towards the actual city of monsters, and it's kind of got its own economy when it comes to the food. It's a fun little part about it. Again, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. There's a lot of little other stuff in there as well, like for example, they brought in guns and how they were using like a combination between the world that Rimuru came from and then of course the new world that he's joined, and mixing different sort of technologies together like the guns, magic, etc. There's a lot of little things in how they mix that, but I thought it was interesting that they brought guns into the actual light novel series. I was kind of like, I wonder if that's going to go anywhere, but it does feel like Rimuru doesn't really want to push that very far, so I do kind of feel like that isn't going to go anywhere. But that also being said, a lot of the magic abilities are more stronger than guns, so it doesn't really matter. There is some, I feel like you could kind of combine different things together to make the gun stronger, but you just have to wait and see. Again, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I will be continuing to do more slime stuff when it comes to the side stories, character analysis videos, stuff on the anime, more stuff on the light novels, you name it. But I enjoyed this light novel. Definitely, it grinded at the start a little bit, but once it got over the dungeon stuff, basically the story became super good. I was really hooked. I was waiting for every moment. So now I'm interested to see where volume 11 goes, because now it's just kind of like, okay, that part of the chapter's done. Where are they going to go from there? Again, love to know your thoughts, but if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe for more anime content, and I will see you, beautiful nerds, in the next video.